Occupational hazards. An occupational hazard is a thing or a situation with the potential to harm a worker. So from this sentence, we can see occupational hazards can be a thing, for example, a chemical agent or physical agent, or maybe this is a situation. For example, your posture or the place you can exposure to the solar radiation. That is a situation. We can find occupational hazards from three different categories. The first one is in the production process. The second one is in the laboring process. And the last one is in the working environment. So you can see the picture. The first picture is in the production process. From the different types of the product, then you will see, because we have to use different things to make this product. So that different things may conclude different types of hazards. If that chemical things, all the things to make the product, the concentration higher than the limits, that will be occupational hazards. And you can find this occupational hazards in the production process. For example, if you make a battery, we need different metals to make the battery. So you will find when we make this battery, we have different procedures. You will touch the different things when you do these procedures. So that is in the production process. The second one is in the laboring process. When you do the dust cleaning the floor or cleaning the working place, you may brush the floor and the dust will go into the air again. Then you may breathe in the different types of the dust inside. That is in the laboring process. And in the working environment, which majority things you will find in a working environment is chemical occupational hazards. You will find different types of particles in the air in a working environment. So cleaning is very important after you work. Keep your workplace clean. That is important. So in the production process, you will find different chemical properties, including the productive toxicants. The productive toxicants introduce some metals, irritant gases, and pesticides. We will talk about later some of the metals poisoning in the production process. And you can see this is the dust. And this is quarry industry. You also can find the dust. And the minefield, the dust has metal particles. And the shoe factory, that's you will find different liquid, maybe the benzene in the air, then the workers can breathe in. And you will see the workers, they are working without a mask and they are working without gloves. So the skin and the breathing room always exposure to different chemicals. That's the shoe factory you can find in Jinjiang. And the second one is in the production process. In the production process, the second one you also can find the physical properties. For example, the high temperature and the noisy. If the work is working in a high temperature for a long time, it may cause heat stroke. We all know the heat stroke may be a threat to your life, to a worker's life. So we can't stay outside when there's a high temperature to do the work for a long time. For example, when you will see some of the workers in the summertime, they have on high buildings to clean the windows. It will be dangerous for the workers if in a high temperature working for a long time. So that is for physical properties. And also the noisy. The machine can make a big sound, can have noises all the time. So if the workers working in a noisy place for a long time, it may cause hearing problem. So that is in the production process. So you will find this is if you dive into the water and compress, and when you get up, you may have this sickness and the mountain sickness too. If you go to a higher place and your body can't suit for the lower pressure, you may have the mountain sickness. Also, in the production process, you may find biological properties such as fungus and pollen. The work in the cotton production may easily get the disease of the pollen. For example, we have a disease called Monday fever. When the workers went to the factory on Monday, the workers get a fever. Then after he back home, he finds the fever is gone. He's fine. And then he went back to the workplace and found he has a fever again. That's because this patient allergic to the pollen or allergic to the fungus, which you can find in the environment from their workplace. So that is biological properties. The SARS virus is also the biological agent. Then we talk about in the laboring process. In the laboring process, occupational psychological stress will also be a threat for the workers. For example, the train driver, when they drive a train, especially in a high speed, they always put themselves in the concentration. They have to concentration for a long time, so the train driver may get a stress. That stress can hurt the driver's psychology, and then they may have the psychological disease because of the driving in with the high stress for a long time. Also, we know now we use a cell phone for a long time. You may find your hands has something problem. So if the workers, holding a machine or use a machine with one posture, and with this one posture for a long time, and this posture is a poor posture, that workers also can get the posture and the muscle problem or the bones problem. So that's in the laboring process. So this is vibration disease. Vibration disease, you can see the workers' fingers with the white color. That is not our normal color of the fingers. That tend to be white because they holding the machine. For example, the digging to dig a hole, and they hold this machine for a long time and caused by the vibration. So the fingers will get something problem, especially the blood tube with something problem and nerves with something problem. So it can cause vibration disease. The last one is in the working environment. In the working environment, you also can find occupational hazards. For example, the natural environmental factors such as solar radiation. That is because you work outside. For a construction place, the workers build a building for a long time and under solar radiation, it may cause the occupationally related disease for the workers. All the plant construction, such as the poor ventilation and inadequate lighting and environment pollution, also can find occupational hazards in the working environment. So this is solar radiation, and in the working environment you can find maybe the air pollution from the environment in your workplace. So that is the third thing we talk about is occupational hazards. For the occupational hazards, we should focus on where we can find the occupational hazards. All the hazards come from three different processes. The first one is in the production process. The second one is in the labeling process, and the last one is in the working environment. So that is the third question, talk about occupational hazards. And now let's move to the second one, is productive toxicant. The productive toxicant, we will introduce. The first one is identification. The second one is sources and the forms of existence. The third one is the way into body. Now let's talk about the definition of productive toxicant. The productive toxicant produced in the production process and in the working environment. So the occupational poisoning caused by the productive toxicant, the workers have excessive contact with poison in the production process. That means the workers' exposure to the productive hazards or the occupational hazards, and this kind of the occupational hazards, the concentration, excessive contact with the poisoning. So the concentration of this kind of hazards may higher than the limit, and after it goes into the worker's body, it can cause the injury or illness. That's occupational poisoning. So the productive toxicant you will find from the production process or from the working environment. Let's see for the productive toxicant resources. You will find it may come from the raw materials, or it may from the intermediate products, or it may be the products or the byproducts, and or it's a decomposition product. For example, in this charge or discharge chemical reaction, you will find the different structure of this reaction. It has a different structure. If we want to make this different structure and put them together to be a reaction, you will face or exposure to different chemicals. For example, this structure, and you will find another hazard from this structure. So when we do this chemical reaction, we have to expose to different agents, and then if this kind of agents higher than the limits, then it may hurt the workers. It may let the workers get an injury or illness. So the toxicants is defined as a chemical substance that might induce the adverse effects on the body even through exposed with a lower dose. Why we think if the body exposed with a lower dose also can cause disease or injury for the workers? That is because some of the toxicants they have adverse effects even when they have a lower dose. For example, cadmium. Cadmium is one of the EDCS. That EDCS can mimic our hormone. Then so with a lower dose of the cadmium goes into the worker's body, they may mimic the hormone, so can disturb the normal hormone systems. So that is why with a lower disease, it also can have adverse effects to the patient. So that is a toxicant. And all the substances in toxicology, we think all the substances are poisons, including the water. So especially for some of the patients, they can't drink any water. If you give them water, may kill them. So all the substances are poison. We don't think there's something without poisons. It depends on what? It depends on the concentration. So the dose is very important for the toxicant. When we talk about toxicant, please remember it has a dose. Even some of the toxicants with a higher dose can have adverse effect to the human body, but some of the toxicants they can have adverse effect to the workers with a lower dose. So dose is very important for the toxicant. That's none which is not a poisoning. The right dose differentiates a poison and a remedy. That is why when we talk about the things, we always think they may a toxicant, but please remember dose. Water for a normal person may be good. We always drink water, but for a patient, it may be a toxicant. So it depends on the dose. How can we classify toxicants? The toxicant can be defined as acute toxicants. The acute toxicants occurred during a short term, for example, in 24 hours. That 24 hours exposure to the high levels of toxicant substance, it may cause the acute toxicity, and it may cause the acute toxicity disease. For example, we know the chlorine gas is a poison gas. If that is a high levels and works exposure to it, it may cause death. So that is acute toxicant. The second one is a chronic toxicant. The chronic toxicity occurs due to the long-term exposure. That long-term exposure should be a low levels of toxic substance. For example, the silicosis. The silicosis caused by the work's exposure to the dust for a long time because of the dust. If the dust is with lower levels and it goes into our body, cause the silicosis, it may take a long time. So that is a chronic toxicity. And between them, we also have another type of the poisoning or toxic. That is subacute poisoning. The subacute poisoning is exposure to the high levels of the toxic substance, but it won't take a long time. But it is not acute, so that's called subacute. For example, lead poisoning. And we also have another poisoning called delayed poisoning. For example, the manganese can cause the worker's injury, and at first time you can't feel it after exposure to manganese, and after you went back home and you have a rest, or you still work for a long time, and after that, after you touch it, exposed to it, you have nothing, and you feel nothing, but after a few days or few months later, you may find your nerve system has something problem. That's called delayed poisoning. So we have 4 different types. One is acute toxicity. The second one is chronic toxicity. These 2 toxicity is the majority of the toxicants caused the workers' illness or the disease. We also have the subacute poisoning and delayed poisoning. So occupational poisoning deals with the chemicals found in the place of work, and the individual workers or the persons working in various industries may be exposed to various agents during the synthesis, manufacturing, or packaging of the substances, or through their use during occupation. That's occupational poisons. Then we talk about the form of the productive toxicant. We know where we can find the productive toxicant. Then we have to know the form of this productive toxicant. 3 different forms for a productive toxicant. This is a chemical agent. It's 3 different forms.